variance, and your standard deviation, you just take the square root of the variance. Now, you could get this variance wrong, but if you took the square root of it and gave it to me for the standard deviation, I gave you a little bit more credit, but you were still wrong because you took the square root of the wrong number. Okay, so that means you knew how to calculate it, you just used the wrong thing to calculate it. And I didn't want to penalize you doubly for doing that.
What is a P?
What, where?
Little P over here.
P means partial credit.
Okay.
Okay. The formula for B is the summation of x minus x bar times y minus y bar over the summation of x minus x bar squared.
Oh, okay.
B is the slope. It tells you for every unit of change in the independent variable, how many units of change in the dependent variable. And you gotta sort of get that. I don't think but one or two people got full credit for the explanation. If you told me the slope, you got, I think, 1 out of 3 points. If you sort of said something about independent and
Wait,
dependent,
so if you put 3 out of 3 on all of them, that means that they're correct.
you got full credit for it, yes.
So we don't have to rewrite.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
So how'd you want that one worded? You wanted,
It should say something that every unit of change in the independent variable, so like on the one we're talking about the bicep, for every centimeter increase in the circumference of the bicep, we would expect, what was it? 5, yeah. That can't be right, I did that backwards.
so for every unit of change in the independent variable, we would expect the dependent variable to increase.
To increase by whatever your B is. So in the one that I gave you, for every increase in, for every 1 centimeter increase in the circumference of the bicep, I would expect weight to increase by 5.36 pounds. I wrote my equation backwards when I'm looking at my answer key. Almost nobody I don't think anybody wrote the equation. So you all missed 3 points on that.
Which one?
Well, the direction says, given B is the circumference of the bicep and W is the weight and the following information, find the regression line. So you guys found B bar, W bar, B minus B bar, the standard deviation of B and the standard deviation of W, but nobody gave me the equation.
So I tried. Okay, I did it.
But which
Okay?
one? Where? Where is that? I don't see that. Where?
Right here. I gave you all the information.
There's a blank space, that's where you wanted it to go.
Yeah, you could have written it anywhere down at the bottom. I just said give the equation, and then I gave you all the pieces you needed to find the equation.
34.
Where does it say?
Where does it say give the equation?
Right there in the
You're
directions.
supposed to divide.
Yeah.
Find the regression line.
Don't know, meant find the line.
Yeah, I was like.
The regression line, we talked about it, the regression line and the regression equation are synonymous.
Oh, and the
You should have
regression.
put like a lead into it. So like,
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't understand that at all. Okay, so you wanted us to put the B.
It should have said W cap is equal to blah, 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 plus blah, blah, blah. So yes.
Oh, okay.
Man,
So that one, yeah, I guess the directions might not have been exactly pure as could be, but you guys missed that part. And you have all the sums there. I gave you all the sums. Some of you tried to multiply different things than that. You just had to take the numbers and actually do the divisions. That's why, so, the next one, you had to fill in the chart, and then you had to give me the,
In word only. Probability of R given.
projector.
What's my date? 13?
Come on, you turned off on me because you timed out when I turned you on.
Try, did you do good? I'm coming over.
You see a lot of marks.
Oh, you got it correct.
It keeps mucking with my pen and making it not work. This gets aggravating.
It's good though.
Oh. Oh, overachiever. No. We all over here were stressed.
I mean, you
I thought you was like D3, but you're like, I don't even know. I thought you were where I was.
I am where you
And
are.
where Megan. And me and Because me and Megan over here like.
Danny, what you got?
Who's?
I didn't know. Speaking of the devil.
Oh, hello.
Oh my god.
People use this thing and then they don't turn it off and then the batteries go dead.
Uh-oh.
Oh, sorry.
And then it doesn't work.
I get to earn 5 points.
Why are you running off? You just got
I have to
here.
go pee so bad. The traffic was crazy.
Great lesson.
1 second.
That's probably why Jonathan's late too then.
Well, Jonathan sent me an email saying that he wasn't feeling well.
Oh. Okay. No, she said traffic's really bad today.
They took the contract flow down, right?
They took it down.
Yeah, like, cause they usually shut it down at like 6:30, but it was still up when I left.
Wow.
So like now that's like the backlash. Like,
What is the formula? Don't turn off.
I don't know.
So how do you do this?
Did.
Which one are we on?
What's the formula for a given probability?
It is the
No,
R and S.
it's the probability of
R and S.
R and S divided by the,
Probability of S.
so if I actually want to do that, if I look at that table, red and straight is 12 out of 212. And the probability of straight is 168 out of 212. Which means that if I actually do the arithmetic there, I end up with 12 out of 168. So you've got to be able to sit down and plug it in.
oh my gosh, I read it wrong. I put it out of 16. I think I forgot that.
Yeah. The probability of L or W. How do you calculate the probability of L or W?
L is probability of L plus probability of W.
Nothing. I had to just take a double take whether or not you were Megan or Michelle, or Michelle.
Did you put Michelle in that?
Huh?
Yeah, they put Michelle.
Or, yeah.
Is it the probability of L plus the probability of W?
Okay, so the probability of L or W is the probability of L plus the probability of W minus the probability of
L and W.
L and W. Which I can look at those three boxes. And here's the one thing. Probabilities have always got to be between what?
0 and 1.
0 and 1.
Always have to be between 0 and 1. I had quite a few probabilities on here and on the take home where you guys just looked at the number in the box, 12. And just gave me, some of you just looked at the number in the box and forgot that it had to be a probability. So you just looked at the numbers and gave me the numbers and added the numbers and then subtracted and kind of got it wrong because you forgot that you had a denominator that you have to deal with. Let me see, where'd my key go? Megan came in and I gave her the answers.
That's how much you can.
You can earn back.
Yeah, you can.
You can earn back.
In Word, what does the probability of B given C mean? And then that question, the middle question, I just copied straight out of the WebAssign. So you have, most of those are given to you. The only two you have to calculate are the last two. All the first four are all givens. What's the difference between the probability of C and B and the probability of C or B?
It's different.
C and B means it's combined to all of it together.
C and B means both have to happen. C or B means one or the other. You got to think of the word and or. So that's what I was looking for. Most of you didn't get that explanation unless I could find the word and or in there. You kind of got shot in the foot on that one. Because that's what I was looking for. The probability, the difference between C and B and C or B is one means both and the other means one or the other. So if I was sort of looking at the very top one, it's red or wavy, which is different than red and wavy. The only way you can get full credit on the next one is you had to calculate the z-scores. If you don't calculate the z-scores, you're simply guessing. Racing, we want the slower time. So we want the z-score farthest to the left. And if they're negative, a bigger negative number is farther left than a smaller negative number. So 2011 would have been better than 2010 because negative 0.99 is farther left than negative 0.3.
Oh my gosh.
Because negative 0.3 is closer to the mean.
But these are, the numbers were right, it's just because we didn't explain it, that's why I got it wrong?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ.
The ACT, the bigger score, the bigger score is going to be the better one. And when one is positive and one is negative, the positive one is always going to be bigger. So that means the ACT should have been better. And the bonus question, the probability of being on the committee is the number of committees you can be on compared to the total number of committees. If it's a committee, does order matter? No.
Not in this case.
Permutation, if I was talking about chair, co-chair, secretary, then order matters because different people can be president, chair, co-chair, and whatever, so this is a committee. So you should end up with a total of 11,628 committees. You can be on 3,060, so your probability of being on a committee is about 26%. That was a bonus question. If you got that one right, you were above and beyond. There were a couple of other ones that I counted as bonus, which means if you got it wrong, you didn't get penalized for it. And if you got it right, you got an extra point for it. So the things that counted like the bonus was the summation of B minus B bar, which is always going to be the summation of B minus B bar will always be zero. Because that's the one that's above A and below. Some of them are positive and some, that's why we square it to get the variance, to get rid of the negatives. So if you got that one wrong or didn't do it, it didn't count against you. If you got it right, so some of you got that one right, but missed some of the other ones in that area, so that kind of helped you. What other one was a bonus?
What was that a bonus?
I know I did a couple of other bonus ones on there. Maybe I had no bonus on the take-home part. So, now, when do I want the corrections?
Right now.
No.
Next.
I will actually give you until next Tuesday. I will release the on take-home part also. So you can see what you got right and wrong on the take-home part. I want the corrections for both parts. So what that basically means is you got your take-home, you got your in-class score, your take-home score, and then there's a thing that says earn back. So if you go back and you just tell me what you did wrong and write it out in sentences, do not cram it back onto here. It's got to be in its own document. And tell me why you got the problem wrong, and some of it was because you just used the wrong formula or you used the wrong number in the formula.
Can we write it off on a different paper and then staple it to this? And then
Yes,
put the
you have to
number?
write it out on a different piece of paper.
Okay.
You must write it on a different piece of paper.
And then just staple it to this and then.
Yes. And if you want to, you can come in and talk to me tomorrow or Thursday or Thursday or whatever, or Friday. I'll even make an appointment so that you can come in and I will help you figure out what you did wrong and what you did right. And a lot of you, it's because you didn't read the right formulas or use the wrong values, which that's why I kept saying on the card you should write the formulas, because a lot of them I said, in class, I'm not going to have you summing all the columns. I just gave you the sums, and that kind of screwed most of you up, is that the sums were given to you. And all you had to do was actually take and do a quick division. And I think that kind of, some of you like, it can't be this easy, and tried to make it harder.
It just looked weird.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it look like that. So.
But I did do that on a couple of assignments where I did that earlier. I said, just find all these sums. Remember that one sheet I gave you where you just had to find the sums? And then a lot of you just tried to take two things and subtract it. But when I write this, B minus B bar, this is just a value that I get at the bottom of the column when I do that for every data point.
Could
I
you,
will probably release the take-home part sometime tomorrow so you can see what you got right and wrong on that. And you need to do the corrections for both the in-class part and the take-home part. So everybody has the ability, if you do that and turn it in, you'll get to a C, minimum. Okay? If you don't do that, then you got the grade on here and then you're in trouble. Remember I said don't fret about it too much? Because I always do that on this test. Cannot do that on the final. Because on the final, once you take it, I got like a day and a half to grade it and turn in grades.
Yeah.
So
The grade we get on the final lesson.
the grade you get on the final is the grade you get on the final. There will be no ability to, huh?
There's
There
no
will be
earn
no ability to do any earn back or do better. So those of you who missed the formulas and missed some of the symbols, you got to get that together between now and the end of the semester.
So the final exam is cumulative?
Unfortunately, yes. In the sense that we will have to be able to calculate the means and do the descriptive statistics. We will be doing z-scores for almost everything else, and we will be calculating probabilities for almost everything else.
Okay.
So the only thing that it's cumulative, I won't be going back and doing certain things, but we will be calculating probabilities and everything for everything that we do from here on out.
Hey, can you give me the definition again in words? What does correlation coefficient tell us?
The correlation coefficient just tells us how well the equation fits the data. And it's always going to be between -1 and +1.
How well the
How well the equation fits the data. And you want a fairly reasonable R. You want an R that's over 0.75, or the absolute value is so -0.75 and 0.75 are the same fit. So the closer it is to 1 or -1, the better the fit. The closer it is to 0, the worse the fit. Smile, Megan.
It's a lot of stuff that.
A little bit.
Okay. Up to this point, we were talking about discrete. And now I've got to move forward, and a couple of questions sort of started towards this that I forgot to take off the practice exam. We start talking about what's the opposite of discrete? Continuous. And continuous disabilities, probabilities. The continuous probabilities are just a little bit harder to do than discrete because you can't count them. And here's where we sort of have to start going into some things with the z-score. Whoops. And let me see if I can find.
Sorry.
lost control. Look at you guys.
So this is everything with the check mark is correct. Everything with.
If it's a check mark, it's correct. If it's not a check mark, it's not correct.